I playfully fed her cake, both of us grinning. After the festivities, I emailed the photos to Bev, along with others from the party. Among them were shots of myself and Martha, my roommate, lounging in bed with sheets drawn up, smiling broadly. I hoped Bev would notice her wedding rings adorning Martha's left hand resting on my chest. An hour later, I received an angry call. "You scoundrel! My lawyer will tear you apart after seeing these photos. What a foolish move." "Hardly, Bev. There's nothing inappropriate in these images. No nudity, just pranks between neighbors. Just light-hearted pictures," I countered. "We'll address this later, Jack. I'll swing by the house this evening to retrieve some belongings. It might be best if you're not there." "If I'm absent, you won't gain entry. All locks have been changed. If you need anything, be there well before 6:45. Martha and I have plans at 7 o'clock, and I'd rather not be late." Last night marked the most satisfying closeness I've experienced, and tonight promises to be even better. With that, I ended the call and ignored her subsequent 5 attempts. While I haven't answered all her calls since, I have listened to every message. Unlike other men in similar situations, there was a good chance Bev might slip up or accidentally reveal a secret in her angry messages. And indeed, she did divulge herself several times in the following weeks. At 4:30 that day, I drove to Bev's workplace parking lot, aiming to arrive before the evening rush. Confirming the absence of security cameras, what I had to do would be swift. Pulling up beside Bev's car, I circled around her, using wire cutters to sever the valve stems on all her tires. Oh, she'd certainly be enraged. And there'd be no fixing them in time to make it home by 6:45. However, it was around 6:35 when she appeared. Evidently, she'd been out with someone, desperate to return home. Having seen receipts for clothing she hadn't brought home, I knew she must have had plenty stashed at her lover's. She must have wanted something else. Slipping out the back door, I hurried to Martha's house, leaving Bev pounding on the front door and shouting. Upon my return that evening, I found my front window shattered, blood splattered around it. After reviewing the porch security footage, I called the police. The video depicted Bev smashing the window with a tire iron, her threats to harm me echoing clear. Unfortunately for her, the lock I'd installed required a key from both sides. As she recoiled, she sliced her forearm deeply, inciting more screams and threats. I promptly reported the incident, and an officer guided me through filing a restraining order. The next morning, Bev was served with papers forbidding her from coming within 500 feet of me or our home. To say she was livid would be an understatement. "What in the world are you doing, idiot?" kicked off her next call, filled with fury and renewed threats. I meticulously recorded the entire conversation. A few hours later, after she had calmed down a bit, she called again. This time, she mentioned sending her friend Lindsay to retrieve some of her belongings that evening. What could she be so desperate to retrieve from the house, I wondered. Suspicions brewing, I agreed to meet Lindsay at 5:30 p.m. on Tuesday. To prepare, I left work a bit early to set up a video camera in my bedroom, with a monitor discreetly installed in my office. Lindsay arrived promptly, and I greeted her warmly. While she packed some clothes into 2 black plastic trash bags, I sat on the bed, observing. Lindsay looked at me nervously, and then requested water from the kitchen. I smiled and left. Upon glancing at the monitor, I noticed Lindsay pulling a shoebox from her closet and placing it into a bag nearby. She then resumed selecting clothes. Upon her return with water, I observed her continuing to pack. She declared that it should suffice, and requested me to take one bag while she took the other, noting that the one she held seemed heavier. I offered to assist Lindsay, but she declined, insisting she was fine and asking me to grab another bag. As she began to fidget and move towards the door with her package, I questioned if there was anything in the package I should be aware of. I grasped her wrist and opened the package, to which she responded anxiously, explaining that it contained clothes and items that Bev needed. Realizing her lie, I confronted Lindsay about the odor emanating from the box, and upon opening it, I found stacks of worn $50 and $100 bills. Accusing her of attempting to steal from me, I rose to my feet and escorted her towards the exit and down the hallway. Lindsay claimed that the money belonged to Bev and that she was merely sent to collect it, denying any intention of theft. However, I pointed out that she came to my house supposedly for clothes, but was leaving with a box of money, which, in my view, constituted theft. Threatening to call the police, I insisted that she prepare to be arrested for robbery. In response, Lindsay pleaded with me not to involve the authorities, citing her children and husband. I seated her on the couch and expressed my disappointment, stating that she would never be welcome in my house again. Despite her protests and tears, I made it clear that if she wished to make amends for her wrongdoing, she had only one chance. You'll leave this house and inform Bev that I caught you stealing. Then you'll report everything you hear or see to me, especially regarding our divorce or her relationship with Sly. You won't divulge anything about our arrangement. Bev made a terrible mistake getting involved with this loser, and you'll ultimately help her leave him. I informed Lindsay that if she cooperated with me, I had the entire incident on video, and I could call the police and file a report against her at any time. Reluctantly, Lindsay agreed to act as my informant. As soon as she departed, I took the box of money and walked to Martha's house at the end of the block. She agreed to conceal it for me until I could safely stash it somewhere beyond Bev's reach. I knew the likely source of the money. Bev's Aunt Mabel, known for her stinginess, passed away a few months ago, leaving Bev as her sole heir. While I knew Aunt Mabel had left Bev a small rural cottage, there was never any mention of money. It seemed that when Bev inspected the cabin after the will reading, she stumbled upon her aunt's hidden cash. When my wife Bev called, enraged and screaming, I recorded the conversation cautiously. "This money is mine, Jack. I want my damn money," she yelled. "Bev, I'm not sure what you're talking about. I caught Lindsay trying to pilfer money from my nightstand. This is mine." "You know exactly what I'm referring to. The money in the shoebox is mine. It's from Aunt Mabel," I retorted. "Maybe Lindsay found some money in a shoebox, but if so, she likely took it and kept it for herself. I don't have it. And if you had money here unknown to me, you didn't report it on your taxes last year. I've reviewed our tax returns. You're welcome to involve the police, and then we'll inform the IRS about this money, letting them handle your tax evasion," she snapped before hanging up. I felt a need for retaliation. I'd pushed Bev's buttons too hard for her to simply disappear. Restricted by a restraining order from leaving her house, I anticipated she might retaliate against me through my car, considering I'd previously vandalized hers. Hence, I had a dashboard-mounted camera installed, but it wasn't sufficient. If she chose that route, I wanted clear footage. Thus, when I parked in front of the garage on Wednesday morning, I set up an exterior camera. Discreetly positioned, it streamed video to my desk, accessible an hour before lunch. I watched on my laptop as Bev parked behind my car, got out, and began smashing it with a hammer, shattering windows and denting panels. The sight of her breaking the windshield and yelling sent a shiver down my spine. I dialed emergency, and a police car awaited her as she left the driveway. Presenting the video evidence of my damaged Toyota, the authorities arrested Bev, recognizing her actions as a criminal offense. The resisting arrest charge was an added bonus. As she was led away, her pleading eyes met my silent stare. Bev's divorce lawyer phoned me Wednesday, notifying me of a court hearing regarding access to the money withdrawn from our joint accounts. Set for Thursday at 10 a.m., I arrived at 9:50, wondering if Bev had posted bail. She entered with her lawyer, wearing a smug expression. Addressing the judge, her lawyer asserted, "Your Honor, my client was denied access to the shared bank accounts. After she filed for divorce, her husband illicitly emptied them. We're requesting a 50-50 split. Mr. Reynolds, would you like to address the court?" "Yes, Your Honor. My wife, who has been unfaithful, has been withdrawing her own funds from our joint accounts for months. The money I withdrew was fair compensation since I cover rent and bills. She abandoned our marriage to be with her affair partner." Bev rose, objecting. "That's untrue. He drained our savings and checking accounts, leaving me with nothing." Her lawyer intervened, guiding her back to her seat for a brief conference while I presented documents to the judge. "Your Honor, these bank statements cover last year. You'll see highlighted amounts, including Bev's salary, up until a few months ago, along with periodic bonuses. Then, about 6 months ago, her deposits ceased, including bonuses. I have a recorded conversation with her HR confirming her direct deposit switch to her personal account. The total amount diverted from our joint account is significant. It's evident my unfaithful wife possesses substantial wealth obtained from our marriage." The judge scrutinized the bank statements and then addressed Beverly. "Do you have any response, Miss Reynolds?" Her lawyer rose cautiously, stating, "Your Honor, even if my client has personal funds, Mr. Reynolds is still obligated to provide her with her fair share." Well, counselor, I don't appreciate deceit. Miss Reynolds claimed she was destitute, yet she entered with you. It's clear she was financially supported from marital assets, deceiving her husband and the court. Since Mr. Reynolds covers expenses from his own funds, there's no reason to alter the financial arrangements. Property division will be addressed in the final divorce decree. Case closed. As I left, Bev confronted me in the hallway. I began noting her threats. Bev, you're violating the restraining order. I'll contact the police if you don't leave. By the way, how was jail? Ready for more time there? You're facing criminal charges. Though she seemed ready to retaliate, I continued toward the exit. She stood, fists clenched, face flushed. Later that evening, I went to a different bar where I had previously encountered an intriguing man named Zeke. Fortunately, he was there. I greeted him and asked if he remembered me, to which he replied that my name wasn't important. Zeke then mentioned that he still had the beat-up car. Expressing his disdain for the car, he explained that his wife had taken the good one when she left with her new lover. He complained about the broken air conditioning and his inability to afford a replacement. I inquired about his car insurance and suggested that if he followed my advice, I might be able to help him get something better. Zeke responded by saying he was listening. Let's imagine you're driving down 38th Street and suddenly a gray cat dashes out in front of you. Naturally, you hit the brakes, and there's a chance the lady behind you might rear-end your lousy car at speeds over 15 miles per hour. Your car could end up totaled, but as long as you're firmly against the headrest with your seatbelt on, you should be okay. Insurance will take care of the damages. Plus, you could at least afford a car with air conditioning. But what if the lady who hits me gets injured? I can't do that to her. Well, I can assure you she'll be an unfaithful wife, and there won't be anyone else in her car if you follow my instructions. What do you think about that? Oh man, that would be great. I can't stand cheaters. And I definitely need to get rid of this car. Park at the corner of 38th and Lessing by 5 p.m. tomorrow. Keep an eye out for a blue Miata leaving the parking lot and heading your way. Pull out in front of it. She doesn't like passing other cars, so drive a block or so until she's tailing you. Then, you'll spot a cat darting across the road. Get ready and hit the brakes hard. Just stay in the car. Afterward, dial emergency and mention a possible neck injury. And by the way, we've never met. I won't be back in this bar, and we don't know each other. Dude, I'm colder than the AC in your new car. On Friday, I left work early to meet my daughter at home. As planned, she finished her classes and returned on Sunday evening. We discussed the divorce situation, and I played her a recording of my conversation with her mother about door number 3. Patty was stunned by her mother's ruthless tone and demands. Then, I shared recordings from the past 2 years, revealing a side of Bev she'd never known. What do you know about the guy Mom's with? Dad? I know he's trouble, and I want you to steer clear of him. If you must meet your mom, make sure it's in a public place. I don't know what he's capable of to get to me. In any case, always have something to protect yourself if there's even a hint he might be around. Patty, I knew your mom and I had our issues, but I never realized the extent of it. What went wrong between us? This was a question I had anticipated, so I proceeded to offer a condensed version of my viewpoint to Patty. I explained to her that her mother and I had fundamentally different perspectives on marriage. After reflecting on the matter, I conveyed to Patty that I had identified 4 main ways power could be distributed in a relationship. There are instances when neither party takes the lead, resulting in a situation where everything drifts aimlessly like a ship without a rudder. Alternatively, both partners may assume responsibility, leading to constant battles over dominance, or a division of control over different aspects of the relationship. Some couples might even share responsibility equally, which was my expectation going into our relationship. However, things didn't pan out as expected. Another scenario arises when the man assumes full control. While such an arrangement may function under specific circumstances, modern perceptions often view such paternalistic relationships as oppressive to women. Yet, if a man wholeheartedly devotes himself to his wife, it can resemble a fairy tale romance, offering a fulfilling life to a wife with the right temperament, free from the burden of difficult decisions. Alternatively, it could mirror your maternal grandparents' dynamic, where your grandmother was passive and your grandfather was dominant and at times harsh. Your mother likely grew up witnessing this and expected a similar power dynamic in our relationship. Consequently, when I attempted to share equal footing with her, she perceived it as a sign of weakness on my part, leading to increasing disrespect despite my efforts to please her. This leads me to the final scenario, a relationship where the wife dominates. It seems your mom opted to take charge. When I failed to meet her standards of a good person, she turned cruel. She dictated which projects should be completed and insisted they meet her standards. Countless times, she initiated family projects only to micromanage every detail, leaving many unfinished because I couldn't tolerate feeling emasculated in my own home. She even instructed me on how to hold tools while working, making it unbearable. In such cases, when the wife dominates, it goes against human nature. I don't comprehend how this dynamic can function. While a husband may remain loving and affectionate, the wife loses respect for him as she exerts control. I believe this dynamic has manifested in our relationship. As I began to resist, Beverly perceived it as a lack of responsibility on my part. By then, she already viewed me as weak. When I refused to be bossed around, she saw me as a rebellious child. I doubt I'll ever regain her respect. This divorce may be my final opportunity to earn it back. I explained to Patty that she would understand my actions when she realized how difficult it was to assert my intolerance for her mother's lifestyle. I advised her that when making significant decisions in her future relationships, such as starting a family or choosing careers and homes, it was crucial for mutual respect to prevail. I emphasized the importance of both Patty and her partner understanding what to expect to avoid the unhappy situation Beverly and I found ourselves in. In response, Patty assured me that she would keep my advice in mind and promised to consider it. Shortly after, the phone rang. "Mr. Reynolds, this is Memorial Hospital. Your wife was in a car accident. She's stable and not severely injured, but she'll be with us, at least for the night." Patty and I drove to the hospital, and I allowed her to enter the room first. She didn't stay long, and afterward, I requested to speak with Bev alone. When she emerged, wearing a gloomy expression, I suspected Patty had spoken harshly to her. "God, you look terrible, Bev," I remarked with a slight grin. "What a dreadful week, huh? First, you lose your marriage, husband, and home. Then you get served with a restraining order and arrested for a felony. Next, you lose some of your expected money, and now your car is totaled, and you're here in the hospital with a broken wrist and a bruised face from the airbag. Seems like this divorce is turning out much better for me." "Freak you," she retorted. "Oh, Bev, where's your old sly charm? Has he come to visit yet? Don't worry, he's probably busy with one of his other two women right now." Her complexion turned pale. "You probably didn't know about the others when you started all this, did you? Well, looks like you know now. I wonder how long it will be before he wants you to serve one of them. I never thought of you as a people pleaser, but that might be a good skill to learn considering how much you'll need it in prison." "I'm not going to jail. My lawyer will get these false charges dropped." "Really? You crash my car and threaten my health, and you think you'll get off easy? Because when I spoke to the DA, he made it clear he's gunning for you. He's got photographic evidence and an upcoming election to win. Now he's aiming to look like a hero cracking down on crime. I believe he'll push for the maximum penalty." She simply sat there, staring at me. "By the way, did you decide which car insurance company to contact?" I asked. "Car insurance? What are you talking about? We still have the same old." "Wait, so you didn't bother getting insurance this week when you filed for divorce? I removed your car from my insurance. You must have known about this, considering you insisted on having only your name on your Miata. If you didn't get insurance this week, you're in serious trouble. You'll face fines, towing costs, and 3 years of payments. That Miata may end up in a junkyard while you're still paying for it. And since you won't have a job after your felony conviction, you may not need another car. Plus, you'll likely have to cover the medical bills for the guy you hit, and his insurance company will demand payment for the damages. Damn it. But at least you have your own medical insurance, right?" "I'm on yours." No, I removed you from my health insurance on Monday. Didn't you take care of that too?" "Baby, you're in big trouble. The ambulance ride, ER visit, x-rays, doctor's fees, cast for your arm, hospital stay, and follow-up care will cost thousands and thousands of dollars. Hey, speaking of medicine, the other day, I was reminiscing about when you fell ill a couple of years back. Remember? I took a week off to care for you. I held your head while you were vomiting and cleaned up everything afterward. When you couldn't make it to the bathroom in time, I called the doctor and went to the pharmacy to get you medicine. Then, a week later when you felt better, you started scolding me again, insulting me, and calling me names. I wonder how well old Sly will take care of you next time you're sick. Well, it's time for me to call Sly now that you think he's done with his other woman. I wish you a good life." As I left, Beverly sat there crying, but I didn't care anymore. Everything went on as usual for some time. I kept in touch with Lindsay occasionally. She started worrying about Sly's influence over Bev, and gradually, Lindsay distanced herself from her. Then one evening, as I returned home and headed to my front door, I was attacked on the lawn. I was cautious about possible attacks, but I didn't see this one coming. A guy wearing a ski mask knocked the wind out of me, twisted my arm behind my back, and demanded I give him the box of money and tell the DA to drop the charges. I felt helpless, but still had the car alarm remote in my hand. I pressed the panic button, setting off the alarm. Sly got furious, hit me again, and then ran off quickly as the neighbor's porch lights turned on and people started looking out. I yelled for someone to call emergency, and a police officer arrived a few minutes later. I wasn't injured enough for an ambulance, and Sly was long gone. None of my neighbors could identify him, so he escaped punishment for the attack. An even bigger shock came when I told my daughter about it the next day. "Dad, I didn't want to tell you, but I also had an encounter with Sly. Mom called me to talk. I agreed, but insisted we meet away from his apartment. She asked me to pick her up, but when I arrived, she sat me down on their couch. Then Sly came out and talked to me. He said since Mom wasn't coping well with her injuries in bed, I would have to tend to his needs. He claimed she owed him, and I would have to pay for it. I looked at my mother, and she just stared at the floor without saying anything. Sly told me to make her comply. Mom looked at me and pleaded, saying, 'Please, baby, stay with him. It won't be that bad, and I really need you to do this for me.' He then approached me, grabbed my wrist, and tried to force me to stand up, saying we were going to the bedroom. With my right hand on the pepper spray in my purse, I sprayed it in his face when he pulled me away. He screamed, grabbed his face, and I grabbed my purse, attempting to pull my mother out the door, but she resisted and went toward him. I yelled at her to come with me, but she chose to assist him in the bathroom, so I left. I can't believe my own mom tried to set me up with that idiot. I don't know if I can ever forgive her for this." I was boiling with anger, like any father in my situation. Contemplating my Beretta in the bedroom, I almost reached for it. After a while, my daughter reassured me, confirming she wasn't damaged, and advised me to consider the future. I made Patty promise not to walk alone until after the trial, and always to have protection with her. She agreed to only date fellow students and never be alone in public. Gradually, I regained my composure. Sly urged me to talk to the DA, but he didn't anticipate the conversation I had. I presented a recording of my daughter discussing Sly and reminded him of Sly's attack on me. The DA inquired if I'd consider leniency toward Bev or dropping the charges. Absolutely not. I insisted on seeking the maximum penalty. Bev is under the control of this manipulative person, and separating them is the only way to help her. A stint in prison might straighten her out. The district attorney agreed, and the trial proceeded. I felt fairly confident at home and work, but there were moments of vulnerability, especially when entering or leaving the garage. However, I was cautious during my commute. Our house sits about 10 miles down the ranch road, with only one turnoff in the next 15 miles. I was well aware of other potential danger zones. During the long drive home, I always had my Beretta with me. One evening, a few days before Bev's trial, I noticed headlights of a pickup truck behind me about 2 miles from home, sending shivers down my spine. Soon, it was tailgating me aggressively, just 20 feet from my rear bumper, going 55 miles per hour. I called emergency on my phone and activated the voice recorder. As I accelerated to 70 miles per hour, the pickup kept pace. Frantically, I requested the emergency operator to contact the detective investigating my assault. The truck continued to tail me for another 5 miles as I narrated the situation. With the pistol lying next to me, I prepared for potential danger. As I approached a bridge spanning a small creek bed, I suspected the driver would attempt to force me off the road. Approaching the bridge, about 100 yards away, the pickup accelerated, indicating its intent to force me off the road. I briefly glimpsed Bev's face in the passenger seat as it pulled up beside me. I braked sharply, causing the car to skid, but maintaining control. Although the truck stopped ahead of me, my quick braking prevented a collision. My car slid to a halt by the roadside, its rear resting on a slope leading down to the creek bed. Exiting the car, I grabbed my weapon, phone, and recorder, descending the steep gravel slope beneath the bridge. As I descended, I noticed the pickup's brake lights illuminate. Navigating in the darkness, I cautiously felt my way under the bridge. Despite the risk of encountering a rattlesnake, I was more concerned about other dangers. Breathing heavily, I sought a secure hiding spot, eventually stopping and tilting the Beretta. I waited anxiously, but heard nothing for a while. Cell phone contact with emergency was lost. Attempting to redial in the dark proved futile due to poor signal reception. I was stuck, uncertain if help was on the way. At least the ominous growl of the pickup truck overhead was absent. I resolved to remain stationary, prepared to spend the night there if necessary. It felt like an eternity, but it was probably only 5 or 10 minutes before I heard a siren in the distance, approaching from the same direction as me. Realizing they were far behind, I began walking up the hill, leaving the Beretta under the bridge. Raising my hands as I approached the road, I implored the arriving police not to shoot. Observing 2 cars parked across the road, blocking both lanes, I heard sirens from the other side and saw a pickup truck heading back to the bridge. I stumbled and fell into the mud. While my view was limited, I heard the pickup screech to a stop, and officers ordered the driver to exit and lie on the ground. Other police cars following the pickup stopped behind it. Soon, Bev and Sly were in custody on attempted slaughter charges. Though deeply worried, I returned home, showered, and attempted to sleep to no avail. When your spouse faces multiple felonies, divorce appears remarkably straightforward. The judge expressed sympathy, and Bev and her lawyer offered little resistance. Desperate to minimize her prison sentence, Bev proposed conceding virtually everything in the divorce for assistance in reducing her punishment. During the sentencing hearing, I testified to Bev's prior virtues before falling under Sly's influence. I expressed a willingness to forgive her over time for attempting to end my life. Omitting her likely infidelity and years of torment, I could not interpret her facial expression in court, nor did I speak to her directly. Ultimately, Sly received a lengthy prison sentence. I hope he shares a cell with a burly inmate named Bubba, who finds him particularly appealing. The judge showed more leniency towards Bev, but she won't be eligible for parole for at least 3 years. So it's been approximately 4 years since Bev was incarcerated. The DA's office informed me that she was granted parole about a year ago. I kept waiting to hear from her, knowing she's not in contact with Patty. Revenge seemed promising, but it didn't live up to expectations. I found myself unable to stop dwelling on everything that had unfolded. So, unexpectedly, I reached out to my ex-wife. "Bev, this is Jack. I have something of yours, and I want it back." I phoned the rehab center where Bev resided now. For a few moments, there was no response. "Beverly, I want to give you a shoebox. Can you hear me? Can we arrange to meet so I can return it to you?" I thought she might hang up, but finally she responded, "Where? When? I don't care." We agreed to meet at a neutral location, like a restaurant, or she could come to my house. I suggested Sunday. "Are you free on Sunday?" After a brief silence, she replied, "I'll be there on Sunday." At 2 p.m., the phone rang. How does one prepare to confront their ex-wife, the mother of their child, the woman who attempted to eliminate them, and a convicted felon? I made lemonade and cookies. When Bev arrived, neither of us attempted to shake hands or hug. We exchanged greetings, and I motioned for her to enter the office. Her hair was much shorter than before, and her eyes were stern. She wasn't wearing much, if any, makeup now. At 50 years old, she looked 65. There were drinks, cookies, and a shoebox on the coffee table. She sat down opposite the sofa, and I offered her soft drinks, which she refused. Did she really suspect that I would try to poison her? Well, if you don't want lemonade and cookies, then I suppose all you need is the shoebox and whatever else we have to say to each other. What's the catch, Jack? What do you want instead? Is there anything left? She remained very suspicious. There's no trick, Bev. It's all there, except for a few thousand that I contributed with an equal amount of my own money and gave to Patty as a down payment for her house when she got married. If you wish, she can start returning your share at your convenience. I simply gave her my portion. I could see from Bev's expression that she didn't know Patty was married. Patty has been married for 2 years, and you're already a grandmother. I sensed the tension in her eyes as she struggled with her emotions. The little girl's name is Shannon Beverly Evans. Shannon is the name of her other grandmother. Bev's eyes filled with tears despite her best efforts. Bev, I know you haven't spoken to Patty in a while. There must be a way for you to reconnect. If you want, I can facilitate that. Beverly nodded, tears now streaming down her cheeks. I reached for the box of tissues I had placed on the coffee table. I'll give you the abridged version of our story if you're not ready to leave just yet, I said gently. She wiped tears from her cheek and tried to compose herself. Patty found a great guy named Stan Evans. He's into computers and networks. They seem to click really well. She's a fantastic mom, and they're deeply devoted to each other. Martha and I didn't last long. She's too young for me, and she just needed me temporarily until she could get her life back on track. She found someone else and moved on. I date occasionally, but I end things if it gets too serious. I'm better off solo. I'll stick to being single. There was silence for a while. I'm going to share some thoughts, mainly for my own benefit, but maybe you can glean something useful from them too. I hope so. I couldn't wait to see you in prison. I loathed you and wished you dead many times, but when they locked you up, my feelings started to shift. I found I couldn't revel in my victory anymore, so I let go of my hatred for you, even though you never asked for it. I forgave you because I know you're not entirely to blame. I couldn't understand you until it was too late, and we stopped communicating. We were just bickering. Beverly composed herself and looked up from the floor. She gave me a lost look but remained silent. That's the truth, succinctly and plainly. If you have nothing more to say, and if you're not hungry, I won't keep you any longer. You probably have important things to attend to. She stood up and took the box as she headed toward the front door. For the first time since I pushed her away all those years ago, I called out to her, Beverly, it doesn't matter now, and you don't have to answer if you don't want to, but I'm curious. Throughout our time together, especially on that last day you were here, it was clear that you saw me as weak. Do you still think I'm a pushover, Bev? She paused with her hand on the doorknob and glanced back at me. She expressed her feelings bitterly, stating that she hated me and believed I had been cruel, asserting that I had ruined her life. After a moment of pause, she added that she didn't consider me to be a pushover. Following this statement, she disappeared from my life permanently.